There's a drive. Deep left center field. And history is made at Kauffman Stadium tonight. Jorge Soler with his 39th home run.
That home run mark for the Royals all time is yours, Jorge.
All right, welcome everybody back to the Royal Way podcast. I'm your host, Nick Wyman. Welcome back after watching episode 1 on Podbean or YouTube. Thank you all for joining in for episode 2 here. As we round out today, we are going to round out the end of the season, the final homestand against the Twins, and we'll look ahead to the offseason to look ahead to see what manager candidates are for Kansas City and who they're throwing around, what names are in the rumors right now. There's about 4 or 5 guys I've heard who have a legit shot at becoming the manager. There's a couple guys I've heard who are fantasy-wise could be managers. So it's kind of up in the air right now. We don't really know for sure, but we'll have to see. I will also make my playoff predictions. After the last 2 wild card games happen, I will make my playoff predictions for the postseason this season. And we'll round it out with fan questions, which you could enter on our Twitter page. I put out a post saying, hey, we got Twitter questions. If you guys would like somehow get on the podcast, I'll answer your questions. We have a couple questions to answer in our mailbag segment, I should say. So to start things off, we had a final homestand in Kansas City against the Minnesota Twins, who are playoff bound. We'll be playing the Yankees in the first round. The Royals' first game did not look so good. Not really much to say there. They got rained out. And, well, they played about 6 innings and they got rained out. The next game, they didn't win. And the Sunday game is really one I want to focus on because this was Ned Yost's final game. There's a lot of emotion in this game. First thing I want to get across is Alex Gordon got taken out in the 5th inning. It might be his final time wearing a Royal uniform, waved to the crowd. And, that's awesome to see. He's from where I'm from here in Lincoln. It was great to see him get a standing ovation. He's one of the most liked Royals, one of the best Royals of all time. He's a multiple-time Gold Glove winner. Everybody will remember him from hitting Game 1 off Yuri Familia. He hit that home run in the World Series Game 1 that tied the game in the 9th inning. He's done a lot to be a Royal. He's been a Royal his whole career. This might be the end of the line. We don't know for sure. He said he'd decide the next, couple weeks to see if he's coming back. I'd like to see him come back and get one final run like Dwayne Wade did. But, time will tell. Ned Yost retiring. Ned Yost has been with him his whole career pretty much. It could be a good time to retire as of right now. But, yeah, the game ended. They were down. They got a couple hits, and then Brett Phillips came up, hit a sac fly, and the Royals scored and won the final game of the season. I'm fine with winning the final game. It wasn't a great record-wise season, but getting a walk-off in the final game of the season against a playoff-bound team, that's pretty impressive. After the game, Ned Yost got the live after-game press conference, basically, from Joel Goldberg of Fox Sports Kansas City, and Salvador Perez, and Alex Gordon gave him the Gatorade bath. Salvi splash, as we say it here in Kansas City, right after the game, and Ned thanked the fans for everything he's done, everything that's happened because of them. They've created memories that will last a lifetime. When they won the World Series, the parade was insane. In Kansas City, they haven't seen one in forever. In a lifetime, and it was something special in 2015 and 2014. Those years, even though we lost in 2014, was something special, and to get back to that stage is pretty impressive. After not many people go back-to-back World Series. So the season ended. It did not end in a pretty note. Whit Merrifield, he led the league in hits for, another season, over 200 hits. That's something to look at. Hunter Dozier, he tied for the league in triples with Mondesi, Whit, a lot of guys hitting triples. Jorge Soler leading the American League in home runs. Those are some solid stats coming into the 2020 campaign coming up. And these, hitters, we got a really good hitting team, as you can tell. Mondesi had a lot of stolen bases. Those are, those couple guys, you just keep them together and let them progress and put talent around them and progress them. It's a solid future. The only downfall was the pitching to start the year. When the pitching struggled for that, that 3 to 4 month stretch to start the season, we couldn't get a win, couldn't save a lead to begin the game. That's what cost them the season, to say the least. Brad Boxberger, he was in there. He didn't perform very well. Jake Diekman, he started figuring out before he got traded. And other names, just a young bullpen, and it just was not what was up to par with some of the major league talent. From AAA to the majors, it's a huge jump. So if you look at those AAA stats to the majors, it's a huge jump. And they just got to figure out that stride. And I'm fine with playing the young guys and struggling for a couple seasons, get them a little bit of the workload and figure it out and move on with it. So it should be an exciting season next year. Just figure out the bullpen problems, the pitching problems. The hitting was there. We saw it in the stats with the home runs and the triples and the stolen bases and the defensive play. It's there. And Salvi coming back next year is just going to be even better. So rounding out the season, Ned Yost retiring. There are 5 people I've heard legitly have been up for the managerial spot here in Kansas City. I will list them on, how I've heard them, how likely I think they have a chance of becoming the manager. So I'll list from 5 to 1, 5 being who I think least will get the job versus number 1 who I think will get the job. This isn't who I want to be the job, just to clarify that. It's just who I think the new ownership and Dayton Moore will make the call here for the new managerial spot that's open. So number 5, I have Raul Ibanez, who is a former Royal. He played in the majors for a long time, played with the Yankees, played with the Phillies. He's one of the names I've heard. I'm not too sure how I feel about it. I feel like it's not very likely because he doesn't have, all the managerial experience, which I think Kansas City wants an experienced manager or guy who's inside the, affiliated team right now. And I don't think he's one of them that I could see getting put into there. Another one is just like that. I have Carlos Beltran. He's another one. I've heard that name, just retired a couple of years ago. He used to be a former Royal in the early 2000s with Johnny Damon. And I just don't see it just because he's not inside the system. And I think, it's kind of a stretch. Who knows how good they are as a manager. It'd be fun, but I've heard it, from a lot of people, and I'm not too sure. Another one I've heard is Joe Girardi. I don't think he's coming back to manage. He's on MLB Network. I don't think there's a chance he comes back. Another one I have is Dale Swain, former Cubs manager before Joe Madden. The Royals, he's in the Royals staff right now. I could see him being a legit shot to become a manager, which I would not be surprised. These are the 2 most likely ones I've seen are Mike Matheny, who was fired by the Cardinals last year. I could see this one being I'm probably 80% sure it's going to be him, which, he's had experience as a manager. He's, coached Cardinals. He was there for years before everything kind of fell apart. But I think if he had a young team, a young group, he can lead them to a victory. It depends. Some of the managers go somewhere and they do a lot better. Sometimes they go somewhere and they do a lot worse. It's just a matter of trial and error. And the number 1 guy I can see the Royals hiring as manager is Pedro Grifol. Pedro Grifol, he's players like this guy, and he's been with the Royals staff. And I think, he's the guy who they're going to have to hire, I think. I think him and Matheny are the top 2, and I think between those 2, I think otherwise I'd take those 2 over the field and over everybody else as of right now. I've heard. We're not going to know for maybe another month. We'll see. I don't know how long it's going to take for the Royals to, hire a manager. When we do, I might break some news on here and do a special podcast for a manager and talk about him because it's a big deal. Ned Yost has been there for 9 years, starting in 2010, and a new manager changes everything. And who depends on what the ownership does with him. If they change the team a little bit, make some trades, make some signs, we'll see what happens between those, manager and the new ownership. It's going to be interesting in the next couple months to see what happens. And for now, not really much going on here. So I'm going to make our playoff predictions for myself. So we already know what happened in the wild card game. We'll scratch that out. We'll just put those teams in. I'm not making my predictions, including the wild card. So I'll make our AL and NL picks for who I think is going to take home the World Series trophy this year and who will, win this year. I think, it's a tough task to ask for some of these teams because some of them I just see in the postseason. I don't think they're going to do much. Some I think they're going to do. There's a couple teams that I look and I think, oh yeah, they're easily going to make it. So I will make my predictions here in a second. So do we start in the AL? And then I'm going to start on the AL side. We're going to do first the divisional series, and we'll go to the semis and then to the championship. So the Twins and the Yankees. I really want to pick the Twins. AL Central. I want to rep the AL Central of how how much gets thrown on the AL Central for not being a good division. I think that the Twins are a great team at over 300 home runs this season. I just think the Yankees are too much. Their hitting is going to be outstanding this postseason. It depends if the Yankees pitching can stay in it. And with that, I'm going to have to pick the New York Yankees to move on to the AL Championship Series. I know I said the AL Central. But I have the Yankees beating the Minnesota Twins. Houston Astros and the Tampa Bay Rays. The Rays won the wild card game over the Oakland Athletics last night. Houston and Tampa, this is too easy. I got Houston. I think the pitching's too much. Greinke, former Royal, I have to go with Houston. Houston and New York in the championship series. On the National League side, the Braves and the Cardinals. This one might shock if you feel. I have the St. Louis Cardinals moving on to the National League Championship Series. The team struggled. Like Atlanta every year, I feel like they make it to the playoffs and they just struggle. So I have St. Louis upsetting the higher seed Atlanta Braves and moving on to the AL Championship Series. The Nationals and the Dodgers. This one, I think, they just use Scherzer. Strasburg already pitched. I think the Dodgers are going to win this series. They're such a young team with a lot of talent around them. And I have the Dodgers moving on to the NL Championship Series. So for the ALCS, the Yankees and the Astros. This one, I have the Astros moving on to the World Series yet again. I think, the team's just too deep. They're a really good team. Just depends if they can stay healthy. They beat the Yankees two times in a row. That means they beat them in 2 of the last 3 years, beating the Yankees in the ALCS. St. Louis and the LA Dodgers. This one, I have the Dodgers beating St. Louis. I think the Dodgers are just too much. Really good team. And we're having a rematch of 2 years ago, the Houston Astros and the LA Dodgers. I think this goes 5 to 7 games. I don't think it's going to be a sweep. I think 6 more likely. I have the Houston Astros taking home the World Series this year. 2 of the last 3. Houston, I just think, is too tough. The pitching's too tough. The team's experienced in this spot. And I think they're going to perform and look really good and dominate this postseason. Verlander, Miley, Sanchez, Greinke. The bullpen's really good. Altuve, Springer, Bregman. The team's just stacked from top to bottom. I think they're just one of the most elite teams in baseball. I think they won the trade deadline, and I think this is where at the trade deadline you have to make those moves and can push you to the World Series. And I think those moves did. I think that will really help out the way the Houston Astros can make it to the World Series. All right, here we go. We got our final segment of the day. It'll be fan questions today. So we have a couple questions, and at Royal Rupert has a question. He said, will my favorite Royal, Mark Grulinski, get any consideration for manager position? I remember him. He used to be a second baseman. I think he played for the Royals, and he played for the Dodgers for some bit. I don't think he will. I think he's managing in the White Sox minor league system right now. I don't think he will, but I do remember the name. But, he is a defensive guy. He's he hit, and, he had speed. But I don't think he's going to get any consideration. He's just a former player. He's coaching AAA baseball, I believe. AAA or AA for the White Sox. Don't get me wrong. Don't quote me on that one, but I think he is. And I think, I don't see him getting any, recognition on that and getting, consideration for the manager job. But I think he's probably doing a great job. I remember he had Alcides Escobar down there in the minors in the White Sox system. So that's pretty cool, but I don't see him getting any consideration for the Royals job. He also asked another question, what does Nick Heath have to do to be considered for the starting center fielder in 2020? I love both Bubba and Maverick, but wow, they can't hit. Thanks. I don't think there's a chance Nick Heath will make it to the majors to start the season on opening day. I think Bubba and Maverick is Brett Phillips for anybody who doesn't know that. I think those two are going to be our outfielders next year. It depends if Gordo retires, then I'd maybe put Brett in left field. It really depends. Maybe I put him in right, and then in left field we put I don't know. Maybe you have to put Witt in right field, and then Maverick in left and Bubba in center. It's a hard thing to do. There's a lot of outfielders. Like last year when the season started, we didn't know who was going to play right field because there's so many outfielders. And Soler's probably a DH. So I think Nick Heath, I mean, if one of those guys struggles and Nick Heath or somebody gets hurt, Nick Heath is the next in line, I'd say. He did really well in Double-A, made his way up to Triple-A last year, got a couple steals within, a short amount of time. And I think, if there are a couple injuries, Alex Gordon might retire or something like that. There's a chance he could make the roster. It depends on, how he performs in spring training, how the offseason goes, how he works at it. I think there's a legit chance he could make a run at being, starting center fielder in Major League Baseball. It'd be fun to see him in Mondesi stealing bases. It'd be what we thought Billy Hamilton was going to be. It just depends if Nick Heath can keep the bat going up in the Major League level. So thank you all for the questions. It wasn't a lot, but they were very, I like the questions. I really like the fan questions. If we can get a lot more questions, it'd be really cool to get a lot of questions. So not a big show today. I'm not expecting to have 30-minute shows. I'm kind of expecting to have 10 to 20 minutes just to, get you from your drive to work, your 15, 20-minute drive to work or so. And, that's all I want. I don't want a super long podcast to help you guys, make an hour-long drive or something like that. Or an hour-long, make you in your cubicle and make an hour-long podcast for you. But this is a little short thing for you. Later in the season, off-season, we might have some interviews coming up. So keep your eye out for that. And that is all I have for the show today. Make sure you can follow the show on Twitter at the Royal Way Podcast. You can follow me on Twitter at Nick Wyman. You can follow the show on Podbean, the Royal Way Podcast, and you can follow the show on follow our YouTube channel, the Royal Way Podcast. So whichever way you want to watch on YouTube or Podbean. Podbean is an app on the iOS and Android. You can get it on there. You can also just go straight to the website and look us up through the search engine and subscribe. You can also follow us on YouTube and subscribe as well while you're at it, and follow us on Twitter, as I just said. So next week, we'll see what we're talking about. We'll see if the new manager comes up here in the next couple weeks. We'll see if there's any more rumors that come hit. In the last couple days, I see everything. I see a lot of rumors. So we'll see what happens there with all, the fan expectation on who the manager is going to be. We could have, maybe some call-ins maybe in a couple weeks. Could have an interview, like I said. So keep your eye out for everything going on. And always be royal. And thank you guys for watching. And see you guys next Thursday.